Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. So Republicans have now been in control of the House for about 2 months. They have, let's be honest, shockingly little to show for it. They barely eked out the House majority following the most disappointing midterm results for an out-of-power party in decades. A midterm that was so disappointing, I would argue many others have, largely because Republicans focused so intently on fringe Fox News culture war issues. And now their governing agenda is focused almost exclusively on fringe Fox News culture war issues. For instance, do they have a serious, credible plan to tackle inflation? No, of course not. Have they even pretended to have one? Not as far as I can tell. They're focused on Hunter Biden and whether or not we should cut off aid to Ukraine. And I have to admit, the Democrats, who are now unburdened from the responsibilities of unified government, which are difficult, are having some fun. Yesterday, President Joe Biden took Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia to task, who's the face of the Republican Party, for a spurious claim she made about overdose deaths.
Marjorie Taylor Greene and a few more, you're going to have a lot of Republicans running our way. Isn't she amazing? Oof. Ours, the reason she was very specific. I shouldn't digress, probably, but she was very specific recently, saying that a poor mother who lost 2 kids to fentanyl, that I killed her sons. Well, the interesting thing is that fentanyl they took came during the last administration. Look, folks. Anyway, I don't want to get started.
You kind of wanted to get started, didn't you? Credit where it's due. It's probably a smart political strategy for Democrats to highlight and elevate Marjorie Taylor Greene at every possible turn from now until 2024. Congressman Jamie Raskin also went on a very satisfying tear this week after his colleague, Lauren Boebert, used a rather worn and obnoxious Republican verbal tick favored by Donald Trump.
The gentlelady was making a grammatical error that I heard some of her colleagues make before. I believe she referred to a Democrat solution. I heard another member talk about a Democrat member and a Democrat plan. I just wanted to educate our distinguished colleagues that Democrat is the noun. When you use it as an adjective, you say the Democratic member or the Democratic solution or the Democratic plan. And so I assume it's a good faith grammatical error the first few times. But after people are corrected several times and they continue to say it, it seems like it's an act of incivility, as if every time we mentioned the other party, it just came out with a kind of political speech impediment like, oh, the Banana Republican Party, as if we were to say that every time we mentioned the Banana Republican member or the Banana Republican plan or the Banana Republican Conference. But we wouldn't do that.
You can kind of tell he'd been holding that one in for a while. There was also that moment a few weeks ago when freshman New York Democrat Dan Goldman, part of the new Republican-led Committee on the Alleged Weaponization of the Government, pushed the committee chair of that committee, Jim Jordan, on the dozens, he said, of secret whistleblowers that Jordan claims exist without offering any evidence.
You talk about dozens of whistleblowers. When are we going to get that information?
When they testify, when we I'll work with the ranking member on that information.
You don't have any transcriptions of their interviews?
We have the first one, and we have the dozens who come and talk to our office.
They talk to your office privately?
They talk to Republican staff, right.
And they're not transcribed, no notes, no nothing?
The first one happened Tuesday.
No, I'm not talking about the first one.
The first one happened Tuesday, the next one happens tomorrow, the third one happens next Wednesday, and we'll continue to do that.
You just said dozens. Do you have notes from those, or they're just talking to you, your staff?
Mr. Chairman.
Are there dozens, Jim? Really, dozens? So that exchange happened last month, and the reason we played it for you, it's notable, because since then, the committee has had testimony from a few of those so-called whistleblowers behind closed doors. Republicans claim that these men, who are all former or suspended FBI agents, have inside information about anti-conservative bias among federal law enforcement. And I got to say, to take a step back for one moment, right? The idea in the abstract that there are corrupt abuses of power among the intelligence or national security or law enforcement agencies in the United States federal government seems perfectly plausible to me. In fact, look at the history of the FBI. There's been a pretty long record of that in the FBI, okay? So in the abstract, not a crazy contention. Devil's in the details, though. Are these really credible folks? According to a new 300-plus page report from the Democrats on the committee, Jim Jordan's star witnessers don't exactly seem to have the goods. So one of them is a retired agent named George Hill. He once tweeted that the January 6th insurrection was actually a setup, who claimed that the January 6th pipe bomber, remember that person that we have footage of planting those pipe bombs, and has still not been caught, that pipe bomber is actually a Democratic operative working with the FBI, and that, and I quote him here, the FBI are the brown shirt enforcers of the DNC. Okay? So in other words, the FBI whistleblower thinks the FBI operate like fascists, like Nazis, in support of the Democratic Party. This is, just to be clear here, in case you forgot, the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the federal law enforcement, okay? An army of liberalism, a fascist army of liberalism. Jordan also brought forward a suspended agent named Garrett O'Boyle. This is another witness. And according to the report the Democrats issued, this gentleman, quote, compared COVID-19 vaccine exceptions to the actions of, yes, you guessed it, a Nazi police force. Now, this O'Boyle figure, who's the second of Jordan's illustrious whistleblowers, also has some notable ties to some of Donald Trump's extreme MAGA allies. For instance, he admitted to receiving financial assistance from a former Trump administration figure, that guy, remember him, named Kash Patel? Patel was Trump's ally in his perceived battle against the so-called deep state, which he claimed, without evidence, was sabotaging his presidency from within. And according to the report, when O'Boyle needed a lawyer, Patel hooked him up with one of, and I couldn't make this up if I tried, one of Trump's coup-pushing election attorneys. It's a nice circle of life there. That's not all. We got another one. The third alleged whistleblower. This guy's named Stephen Friend. He also has ties to Kash Patel. He says Patel gave him more than $5,000 shortly after they were introduced, which is a nice thing to do when you just meet someone. I don't know if he does that for everyone he meets. Patel actually gave him a job as well after Friend left the FBI. Now, Friend resigned from the Bureau. And in part, he says the reason was over concerns that the FBI used excessive force when a SWAT raid was used to detain a January 6th defendant. And again, I am duty-bound to note here, the FBI or any law enforcement using excessive force in a SWAT raid is a completely plausible complaint, right? Totally plausible. This happens all the time. So it sounds reasonable enough in theory, except, keep reading, according to the New York Times, quote, the suspect in question was accused of being a member of a right-wing militia group connected to the Three Percenter movement. Okay, well, did they really need a SWAT team? Documents in his case indicate that on January 6th, he posted a video of himself outside the Capitol wearing body armor, not great, and a gas mask, okay, and carrying an AR-15 style rifle. Okay, I think, yeah, you probably want to be a little careful going into that house. What's more, according to the report, quote, on cross-examination, Friend admitted that he was not a member of the SWAT team and did not participate in any decisions about the use of the SWAT team. And he acknowledged that the individuals arrested that day were known by the FBI to be armed and dangerous. This was Jim Jordan's smoking gun. This was proof of the alleged weaponization of the government. Now, Jordan isn't going to quit here. According to a letter he sent to the head of the FBI last year, he also wants answers about the attempted firings of, quote, FBI employees who were engaged in protected First Amendment activity on January 6, 2021. What he means by that is folks who were protesting with Trump's mob in Washington on January 6th. Those are the fired FBI agents Jim Jordan thinks are being treated unfairly.